Joining me on the channel today is L.U.C.K Stegman, a LA-based arts publicist and author whose middle grade debut novel, Summer of Luck, is out now from Intense Publications. It's about a trio of friends who meet at a summer camp and who acquire the power to hear each other's thoughts. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
And I always like to start at the beginning and explore what kind of kid you were before becoming an author. So tell me, what was your childhood like? What kind of kid were you?
I was a very imaginative kid. I grew up in Los Angeles, and I always wanted to be an actress. And my dad was in the movie business. He was a publicist also. He was a movie publicist, entertainment. And I just thought it was super glamorous to, be an actress, a kid actress. I always wanted to be a kid actress. And I always made up stories about the TV shows that I watched. Like I would make up an episode of a story in my head and act it out. I didn't write it down or anything like that. But I grew up really, that was my goal. And I went to college. I was a drama major, and I graduated, and I started exploring the life of an actress in Los Angeles, and it didn't turn out to be the kind of life that I wanted. So I got a job, and I started working. I like the idea of more stability in my life and having a regular place to go and a regular paycheck. And I found myself ultimately in the public relations business. Worked for a couple of firms over the years, and then I started my own business, and I've been doing that for many, many years. As an arts publicist, I represent classical music organizations, theaters, performing arts, that kind of thing, and it's been a really rewarding career.
Working as a publicist and public relations, it's a field that's really fascinating to me. So can you tell us, what does a publicist do?
Well, a publicist can be a lot of different things, but what I do as a publicist is I am like an agent for my clients. I generate media coverage for them. I will come up with an idea to pitch a story to a newspaper or a television news show or an online blog or some kind of online outlet. And I will, I'll put together a pitch, or I might even do it verbally. I have media contacts, and I try to connect an idea with the right media outlet. It's very much like in the field of writing, it's very much like querying an agent. I've never been an agent, but maybe it's like what an agent does to query a publisher. Mm-hmm. Because you have to come up with an idea that's going to appeal to someone. And one of my, it's always such a great feeling when one of my ideas for a story gets accepted, and then the media outlet will interview my client, or, it's a lot of setting up interviews and that sort of thing. So it really helped me when I was promoting my book, because I knew how to promote. And when I was the client, it just became kind of an interesting turn of events.
Yeah. Have you been able to kind of use your skills to promote your own book in this way?
Yes. I mean, I have. I mean, there's so many, I have arranged a lot of interviews for myself along the way. I'm really proud of the work that I've done for promoting Summer of Luck. I've also used all kinds of other, social media platforms that that's not what I do as a publicist. Although I might add that today, in today's media world, you will find publicists that absolutely specialize in social media, using social media and posting and coming up with strategies and all the kinds of things that I might do with traditional media. And when I say traditional media, I mean, I'm including blogs and today's the things that people read and use today. So so that has been extremely helpful
Yeah.
in putting together a plan to promote Summer of Luck. And I know that, you know, because I have a very small publisher whose publicists strictly focus on social media, I have been able to arrange a lot of press coverage for myself that I wouldn't ordinarily have had.
Oh, yeah, that's so lucky. Since a lot of people who watch this channel are authors, do you have any tips for authors, what they can do to get their own books kind of out there and publicized?
I would suggest absolutely, you know, keeping up with the social media that other authors use. You know, follow authors. You know, I mean, there's a whole writing community hashtag which you can fall down the rabbit hole with that. But if you follow published authors or authors who are talking about what they, you know, writer tips or query tips, or I don't know, there's so many hashtags to follow, but I just kept my eye on Twitter, using Twitter as a resource. And then when I found a writer that sounded like they were, you know, that said, you know, watch me on this, you know, YouTube channel or whatever, I'd go to their website, I'd find out, I'd start following them, I would look at what they were doing, I'd get ideas for the outlets. I had a bag full of you know, YouTube hosts and YouTube channels and blogs, writer blogs, and things that I wanted to pitch about a story about Summer of Luck. So I had all these resources ready to go when I actually got a publishing deal. And I would just suggest spend as much time as you can, and that's not even that much time. You know, maybe half an hour a day, going through things where you're looking for resources for yourself. That was invaluable for me.
Fantastic. And what kind of books did you read as a kid growing up?
They're all up here in my bookshelf. Not all of them, but many of them. I loved fantasies. You know, where ordinary kids in a regular life would find a way to, you know, would find something magic happen in their lives. But I also liked stories about families that didn't have any fantasy elements, and about kids who discovered things and how to cope with situations that they didn't know how to cope with. I loved identifying with kids who had a certain problem that I also had, or an insecurity that I also had, and I loved learning that I wasn't alone, that there were other kids that were just like me through the books that I read.
Definitely. And so how did you go from being a kid who liked books and to ultimately wanting, and then a publicist, and then ultimately to wanting to write your own book?
You know, when I started doing interviews and people were asking me these questions about how did I become a writer or whatever, it took me a long time to remember how much writing I actually did, even as a kid. You know, I told you that I made up all these stories, but I also remember that I invented a neighborhood newspaper, and I used to write articles about what was happening in the neighborhood. And then in, you know, not so much as a teenager or in my early career, but once I got into public relations, I became, I wrote a lot. You know, I wrote press releases, but I also wrote feature stories about clients, and I loved it. That is my favorite part of being a publicist, is the writing. And you have to be a good writer, because you can't just go to a media outlet and say, hey, do a story about my client. They're really interesting. You know,
Yeah.
that's not going to fly. So, you know, you need to communicate why they're interesting and what about them is interesting. And just also kind of just real quick, going back to your question about what a writer can do to prepare. I mean, come up with reasons that somebody might want to talk to you about your book. Not just I wrote a book, but here's how my own insecurity or my own search for this or that is woven into my story, or just things that would make an interviewer sit up and take interest and pick you maybe over the 17 other pitches that they got.
Maybe
So,
also like what is in your book that is different from any other book out there.
Right.
And
Right.
Yeah, what makes you as an author especially interesting.
Yeah. And I totally diverted from your question.
Oh no, it's fine. This is good stuff to talk about. Anything that's educational for the authors who are watching the channel, I'm like, the more the better. And so I'm loving all the publicist stuff, because I'm like, I think that's all really relevant content for our viewers. Tell us about the day that you found out your book was going to be published.
Okay, well, I have to just give you a little background about my journey to become a writer. So, as I said, I worked as a publicist. I also, on the side, started doing interviews with musicians. I also started pitching my own stories. My husband and I did some freelance writing. We wrote, all this is nonfiction stuff. So, I had a lot of experience doing that, and I really, really enjoyed it. And one day I just thought back to when I was a kid and how, especially there was especially one book that I just continued to read over and over again as an adult. It made me feel like I wasn't alone, as I said. And I thought to myself, I'd really like to write a book for kids, for middle graders, that would make some other kid maybe feel the way that I felt about that book. And so I sat down and I started writing Summer of Luck. And that was in around 2001. So, do the math. And it's been a long journey, a very long journey. And it was really much of the journey, I would say 2/3 of it was learning to write fiction. And, I had a story and I thought I was the best thing in the world, and not so much agents. I just didn't get any, I got a lot of advice to, this is missing, this needs this, whatever. And about halfway through that period, I was lucky enough to connect with an agent I knew, who suggested that I work with a development editor. And so that development editor really helped me learn to write fiction. I mean, that was sort of the bottom line. And then 3 or 4 years ago, 4 or 5 maybe, I started connecting with other writers. And the writing community online, I think I saw something in some of your stuff that you had applied to Pitch Wars or something like that. And I did too, and I didn't get in. But that was a route for me to start getting opportunities for people to get to see my first 10 pages or to see whatever. And I got so much feedback. I entered Twitter pitch contests. I took every opportunity I could to get my manuscript before people and to get feedback from people who knew what they were talking about. And then I took advantage of the critique partner matchups that exist online. And I got gold critique partners. I have, been really lucky in that area. And I started having, I reached out to friends for beta readers, but through friends of friends, I got other beta readers. I just got as much opportunity as I could to have feedback. And at a point when I really realized that the feedback I was getting was no longer, was enough. It was fine. It was ready to go again, back to querying. And I went through another journey with that. And when I finally decided that, and again, I mean, I'm not a spring chicken, and I'm not looking to make a career out of being a writer, because I have a career. I just love writing and I want to continue that. And I would love to just do that, in fact. But I didn't have as much time perhaps as maybe a 20-year-old did. So I decided that after, querying 100 agents and getting a lot of requests and a lot of interest and a lot of good feedback, but no offers, I decided to go directly to small publishers. And last October, I queried about 18 small publishers. Some of them requested the entire manuscript. Some of them wanted, some of them, just asked for smaller things. And I got a very good percentage of requests. But the day that I got my offer was, from my publisher, who's Intense Publications. They had requested the full manuscript. So the email I'll never forget this. I'm going through my phone in the morning and the email comes in and I see it's from them and I'm like, oh, another rejection or whatever. I didn't know what it was going to be because I didn't remember that they had already requested or they already had the full. So I opened the email up and it says, we love this. We want to publish it. And we not only want to publish it, but we would like to publish 2 sequels. Are you interested? And I just was like staring at my phone, tears in my eyes.
That's amazing.
And I walked out into the living room where my husband was, and he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, this is,
So you got a 3-book deal.
This is my dream come true. And that was, of course I talked to the publisher first. I notified the other publishers that I had already queried that had made requests. I did all the right things, but I was really excited about signing with Intense Publications, and it's been a great experience. And I'm really, I'm so grateful to them. And I'm thrilled to have my book in hand.
Yeah.
This
show it on the screen.
This is Summer of Luck in print.
Fantastic.
And, it's really my dream come true.
That's great. And it's really interesting that you mentioned getting rejected from Pitch Wars, because just prior to your interview, I recorded a interview with 5 other writers who also got rejected from Pitch Wars, but who now have agents and book deals. So that's so anyone else who's kind of a regular on the channel knows that if you get rejected from a contest or a mentorship situation or like Pitch Wars, it's not the end of your journey, and there are many other opportunities for your book, and keep at it. It's really about persistence.
Absolutely.
And so tell us about your book. Can you pitch your book? And since you have it there, you could show
Yes. Summer of Luck, not block my face, is about 3 kids finding their way to self-acceptance with the help of a ghost who haunts a magical carnival. And it's a story of Darby, Justin, and Naz, 3 kids who struggle with communication. Darby is 11, she stutters. And Naz, who's 10, he and his mom just moved to the United States from Morocco. He speaks French and Arabic, but he is just learning English. And Justin, who's 12, his father passed away right before the story starts, and he has stopped talking altogether. So when they meet at Camp Inch, they all of a sudden hear this mysterious calliope music, like from a carousel. And all of a sudden, they can hear each other's thoughts, so they can communicate telepathically, which is very convenient. And they want to know where this music is coming from. So they sneak off to this abandoned warehouse, which is next door to their camp. And they sneak in, and it's all dark and quiet. And all of a sudden it bursts into this magical carnival. And they meet the ghost who haunts it. This is a ghost in human form now, but who has come back from the dead. He wants to, he asks the kids to help him reconcile the rift between his adult children. And in return, he promises that he will help them find their voices. So he takes them on a series of carnival rides that help them do just that. And that's the story of Summer of Luck.
I love it. Oh, what a great story. And this is so now you've been through the long journey of getting published, which everyone always who I've been interviewing it's taken 10 years at least to go from I want to write a book to finally getting it published. What's a misconception that you had about the publishing process prior to being published that maybe has now changed?
Well, for so many years, I thought there was just one way to do things. You pitch an agent, you get an agent, you get a contract, and you're famous, right?
Right.
Well, and also, just a lot from the pitch wars, from connecting with the pitch wars community. So many authors, that is their path, and God bless them. That's beautiful. I that just wasn't what happened to me. And if I could say anything, that I learned, it's that everybody's different, and nobody has the same path. So I thought that I had to have an agent. I thought I had to have an agent because I thought I needed that kind of endorsement to be successful. But it turned out that there's plenty of successful authors who, of in my sort of debut year, that don't have agents, that found their contracts directly with publishers. And so that was, and there are a large number of, or a growing number, I should say, of publishers who will accept unagented work. So that was a surprise to me. That was a misconception that I had. But as a side note to that whole thing, I also thought I needed an agent to have that approval of, it's kind of like the whole idea of self-acceptance. I didn't need an agent to get a publishing deal. And so that was an interesting development in my path.
Yeah. What's your favorite step? Is it drafting or revising?
Drafting is not my favorite step. I love to revise because it's already there. However, I do love the kind of experiences that I've had, especially with my sequel, which I'm almost finished with. Where I'm stuck, and then all of a sudden I come back to it and I'm flowing, and all these things come out of me, and I'm like, wow, where did that come from? That is so exciting. I love that.
And are you a perfectionist or a chaos artist?
I am so a perfectionist. Chaos makes me really uncomfortable. So
do you have a huge ego, or are you humble?
Well, I like to think I'm humble. That's something I work on very frequently.
Yeah. And are you a morning writer or an evening writer?
I am an evening writer. Ever since I signed my contract with Intense. I had started the Summer of L.U.C. sequel last summer, but ever since I signed my contract with them, almost every night for all that time, that was last fall, I have been writing in the evening from 6:37 to about 10. And it's not completely straight through, but that's the time that I have set aside in my life to do my writing.
And are you a plotter or a pantser?
Definitely a pantser. I love to see my story unfold before my eyes.
Do you focus on the character first or the plot first?
So I think character would probably be the way I would answer that question. Yeah.
And what revision suggestion have you gotten along the way that has been most helpful for you?
There's two, and they both involve the character of Darby. The first draft, I've written and rewritten Summer of L.U.C. 8 or 9 times. I've revised it too many times to count. One of the suggestions that I got from the development editor was to, there's a pivotal scene at the end of the book where Darby gets tricked into performing in a talent show and being a stutterer and being very shy. It's like the worst thing in the world that could happen to her. And in the, you know, until I started working with the development editor, there was no talent show scene. It was just referred to. She did it. Everything was great. And this development editor said to me, you have to have the talent show. And I'm like, oh no, then I have to write it. So I did write it, and I did find that that experience of the character's success at performing and doing what she thought she could never do was incredibly transformative. Additionally, the end of the story, which I won't, you know, give away, but she learned to accept something in herself. She learned to accept her stutter, basically. Whereas in the original of the book, she learned to stop stuttering. And one of the feedback things that I got from an agent who, you know, who had asked to see the book enough times that I trusted what she was telling me, even though she never made me an author. You know, I went and made the end completely different. And writing those scenes was, again, a very moving experience. And I'm just so grateful to have had all the input that I've had over time to make Summer of Luck a better book.
Yeah, definitely. Would you ever like to be famous?
When I was a kid and wanting to be an actress, I equated being famous with being approved of and accepted. And I wanted nothing more than that. Today, I, you know, through my life journey and all the things that I've been through in all my work and my you know, my regular life, or my own life, you know, I, like Darby, I've learned to accept myself as I am. So the idea of being famous is a little scary now. I don't need that.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to have, you know, 2,500 followers on Twitter. That's about as famous as I might want to get.
If you could ever have any non-supernatural talent or ability, what would it be?
You know, when I thought maybe the question was going to be what's supernatural, and I was like, I would like to fly. That's what I'd love. But it's non-supernatural. You know, I would like to have. I was looking at this columnist in our local newspaper, and I noticed that he wrote a column one day that I read, and then he wrote one the next day. I'm like, how do you do that so fast? Like I would like to have the writing talent, the enhanced writing talent. I know I have writing talent, but it takes me a long time to come up with the words and the not so much the story, but the descriptions and the things that, you know, how to explain how someone feels, to avoid, you know, telling and show instead, but not just show what they're doing, but showing inside how do they feel. I wish that I wish that came much more naturally to me. If I could have that, I'd rule the world.
Yeah. What are you working on now?
I am just about finished with the sequel to Summer of Luck. It's called Ready or Not. It's about the following summer at Camp Inch, and all three kids are part of the book, but it's strictly from Justin's point of view. Okay. And he is struggling with a bully and in his cabin, and a sense of outrage at unfairness in the world that you know, is sort of the arc of the story. And I'm really proud of myself because I'm in sight of the finish line of that book. That means I've written, you know, or, you know, when I finish, I will have written my second book in less than a year and a half, whereas the first book took a lot longer.
Fantastic. That's so exciting. Well, I'm going to put all of your links to your books to buy and your Goodreads and your social media down below. Thank you so much for being on the channel, and everyone check out Summer of Luck.
Thank you so much, Carly, for having me. It's been a lot of fun.